Hello, everyone, and welcome to Future Nonprofit, a podcast and YouTube channel where we sit down with industry experts, both in and out of the nonprofit space, to talk about how to build and scale the nonprofits our world needs tomorrow. I'm your host, Ted Vaughn, the co-author of Culture Built My Brand and the co-founder of Historic Agency. If you have not yet checked out the audio version of Future Nonprofit, it is a highly produced, amazing 20 to 30-minute journey through each of our guests' stories. Be sure and check that out. Like and follow us wherever you get your podcasts or here on YouTube. And I hope you really enjoyed today's episode. We talked to some amazing people. If you are walking into a room to speak and let's say you're speaking a lot, what piece of music do you want to accompany you for all of 2025 when you walk into a room? What's that song, that bumper music that plays when you walk in, after they introduce you and you're walking up to the stage? Here's the music.
Ted, this is a question I've never contemplated. This year for me, I just turned 40. So this is my Renaissance year. Oh. And my youngest just turned 3. So it just feels like I'm out of the baby stage. And so it kind of feels like a freedom anthem, honestly. So it'd have to be something like
something that speaks to freedom, opportunity, yes, blue
and
skies.
Just saying yes, exactly, like opportunity ahead. So
okay, last kind of icebreaker question. If you are describing to a 5-year-old, maybe one of your children, what you do professionally in one sentence, what do you say? What's your answer to a 5-year-old?
Well, I'll tell you, my 5 and 7-year-old both would call me a change maker. And they were studying that in my second graders class. And the teacher asked if I'd come in and share. And they would tell other people that I help teach kids how to read. I help kids learn how to read. That's what they would say.
Yeah. In its simplest, most basic form, you teach kids how to read.
Yep.
You're a reading teacher.
Yeah, I help kids learn how to read. Yep, that's the thing.
Okay, well, let's start, in this first discussion around your journey. I find that every nonprofit leader, maybe everyone, of course, but certainly leaders, something in their story of origin ties back to what they're doing today. There was a moment, a lived experience, a pain, or a thing that speaks to what they're doing today, or at minimum who they are today. What for you is that memory, that thing, that part of your story of origin that you think most connects to what you're doing today?
If we're talking way back, my parents would tell you I had leadership skills very young and like to put people in order. and that I always knew I wanted to do something that made a difference for other people. I think I was planning my first events when I was 10 and 12 and 13 and always just knew there'd be a connection. It's actually really fun now as an adult doing Reading Pals. Several of my teachers from elementary school, my kindergarten teacher, my 3rd grade teacher, my 4th grade teacher, junior high school, they're all now volunteers with me and they're like, we knew it. Way back when, this doesn't surprise us at all that you're here doing this. So I think there were inklings all along.
What did you want to be when you were growing up? When you had that leadership, putting people in order, and did you envision that becoming, I'm going to be the president of the United States, or was it something more?
I mean, there was a campaign when I was in high school. I wanted to be the Secretary of State. That was kind of the idea. And my buddy Brad was going to be the president. 2032, that's what we used to say, which gives us 6 more years. But anyway, that was always our thing. I thought I wanted to be a teacher, and then I watched my parents go through all the bureaucracy of being a teacher and decided that wasn't for me. And then a lawyer came next. And then honestly, when I was working abroad, I was working with human trafficking victims, and I thought that would be my life's work. I had 2 semesters left in college, and when I came back, I turned all of that into research and understanding. I really wanted to dig into why, how do we prevent this? It's so much harder to rehabilitate people who've been in situations like this. How do we keep them from ever ending up there? And that's really the heart of what Reading Pals is prevention.
When you think about the coach or teacher or mentor who is that person that when you were a kid had the most outside of your parents? Sounds like you had great
Yeah.
parents. Outside of your parents, who is the person that for you, whether it was in early adulthood or when you were a young child, that you would identify as having the most significant impact or meaningful impact on your life that maybe has equipped you in ways to be who you are today?
I was really lucky to have several, honestly. One being one of my 7th grade teachers. He made English really fun, and he connected to students in a way that I just never experienced before. It's what made me want to be an English teacher. And then he told me, no, don't do that. You'll be grading papers for the rest of your life. But truly, like the way he made education come alive and really people connect that really weren't the best students, he somehow lit them up and he made it relevant. And that was really inspiring to me. And he was just unconventional. And I think that was like a really powerful moment for me in watching someone really love what they were doing. And that changed the educational experience for a lot of students around me. I loved school. School was easy for me, but I watched him light up the kids that were struggling. And that was a really inspirational.
Is it a proud moment or an awkward moment having former teachers now operating as volunteers under your kind of like you're putting people in their places, including now your teachers?
I know. It's so fun. Like how like what a fun thing for them. It just feels really full circle every time I see. I grew up here in Chico. I was born and raised here. I moved away and never thought I'd come back, but it's really unique to live in a community that has all my history. And so I have people, that have known me since I was born that are volunteering, that are in their 70s. And it's sweet and it's a really unique thing to be working in a community I was raised in and get to have all of these folks that have been a part of my story my whole life be a part of what we're doing now. And it's humbling, really humbling, I would say. And an honor, and it feels like really sweet to have them show up to our trainings, our orientations, and, they just are dear to me. And it feels like my own little cheerleading squad, too, of just people who've supported me along the way. Things weren't always easy in my home life growing up, and so I had so many adults and families that surrounded me from my church that really became family, and that a lot of those folks are people who are around us now.
I find a lot of leaders have one of two trajectories. It's either very linear and intentional and planned. I'm going to do this, and this is the pathway to do that.
Right.
And then there's obviously little changes and things that happen, but for the most part, this is my plan. I'm working my plan. Or it's more like life finds me, and all of a sudden I'm having to veer right, and then I'm having to veer left, and then this happened, and I didn't see that coming, but this opportunity, and it's much more, tripping and stumbling your way forward with some degree of grace and improvement, hopefully each time. Which one is more you?
Definitely the stumbling. And honestly, it's not so much stumbling as it is just my whole I love adventure. Give me change. Give me things to adapt to. I thrive in adaptation. And so but I was raised in a really safe environment. Like that safety was the most important thing. And so I think when I turned 18 and, started coming into my adulthood and just realized what a big world was out there and that it wasn't as scary and you could take risks and fail, or you could just pivot, like that became really a big part of my story. Like I said, left Chico and never thought I'd be back. I wanted to be a part of the big world and then realized that, these massive issues. I mean, I lived in Ethiopia and I lived in Thailand and I lived in Uganda and I worked in different, very large, I thought, to change the world, you needed to go do some big, sexy thing. And I honestly had this moment. I was in Uganda. I'd spent 2 weeks working with former child soldiers. And this was after I'd lived in Thailand and worked with victims of sex trafficking and just kind of had a come to Jesus moment, if you will. I was with friends at a pizza parlor in Kampala, Uganda, and they were talking about movies and fashion. And I was angry, actually. I felt like, how could you talk about this when there's so much tragedy happening all around you in your backyard? How can we care about anything other than stopping that. And went home and was trying to sleep that night and felt really convicted that I'd been very judgmental of my friends who were talking about all these other things. But here I'd been all over the world, like in all these different countries and all these different places, trying to change the world in those spaces. But like, what did I know about the kids in my own backyard? I wasn't caring about their plight. And that was a very humbling moment for me. And when I felt the conviction to like go home to my neighborhood, I wasn't thinking I'd actually literally come home to my neighborhood in my backyard. There's a community here in this town that specifically came to mind. And I just thought, going back to the United States where I speak the language and I already know the culture and I don't need to have a bodyguard or a translator or X, Y, and Z that I needed when I was traveling abroad or working abroad, I should say. And then ironically, like it literally, all of this journey led me to the door of that elementary school in that community. And that's where this all started 14 years ago. And that is also really humbling and a gift, because it's not easy to insert yourself into schools and to say, hey, I want to bring 400 strangers off the street to come help kids learn to read so we can prevent them from winding up trafficked. That's like my real ultimate goal. And then the other piece being, for me, what changed my life, what challenged all my thoughts and ideas, was meeting people from different perspectives and different cultures and different ideas of thinking, different socioeconomic statuses, different perspectives on the world. And I really wanted to connect people that may have otherwise not connected. And I think that's one of the beautiful things. We started Reading Pals to help kids learn to read. But what's come out of it is the relationships between community members who might have always been in like their country club circuit, their comfortable suburban area, and now they're engaging with families and children in totally different circumstances. And it's just provided this really beautiful bridge of relationship that humanizes issues that are happening in our country. And, some of the students are homeless and they're coming, and it just has changed.
Yeah.
It humanizes things that often become dehumanized. And that's, I guess, one of the really beautiful, unexpected, paths of this that we're navigating and just like really lucky to have.
I want to focus on one of the drivers for you. I find in nonprofit leaders, they tend to be driven by three key things. One is either a sense of injustice, like these systems are broken, this is unfair, this isn't right. It's almost like this prophetic need to fix what's broken because it's wrong. And people compassion the individual, but there's just this sense of it's more about this is broken, wrong, not right. It needs to be in order, right? Justice is about order. It's about being right. Or it's compassion. It's just that deep sense of individuals hurting, pain, meeting needs, focusing on the person. Yes, they're related, but it's more person than system. And then the third is often just the fulfillment of making the world better. It's just this deep sense of it could be anything. It could be building wells, poverty, music. It's like there's just this fulfillment in making the world better in a way that resonates with the person. All three are related. They all touch. But which one? What's the core driver? What's the thing that most drives you or causes you to get the most emotional, whether positive or negative emotion? It's the coal fire oven inside of you.
All three resonate, but the one that I think resonates the most is just it's selfish in that I love the sense of like my life having meaning and the purpose of doing something that has these ripple effects that you might never see, the impact, but it just, that it could transform their future. And I really like, there's a Desmond Tutu quote that I've read and it just resonated with like what we're doing with Reading Pals. And it specifically just says, there comes a point in time you have to stop just pulling people out of the river. You have to go upstream and find out where they're falling in. And that literally is the heart of what Reading Pals is like, we're going to block as many kids as we can from falling into that river. And maybe that river is incarceration, maybe it's homelessness, maybe it's drug abuse, human trafficking, yada, yada, yada. But like, we're going to catch as many kids as we can because it takes people. Like, all the resiliency research is that even just one positive adult 1 hour a week can transform a kid's future from hopelessness to hopefulness and just the way that they think about themselves. And so I think for me, that's the driver personally, is just knowing that like, I didn't waste my time here. And life's such a precious gift. And I think with that deep awareness, like knowing that I just want to use it the best I can.
Let's talk about the origin story of Reading Pals Chico. So you clearly have a background in areas of deep, dark brokenness in the world. And now, to quote your earlier summary statement of how you describe yourself or what you do, you teach kids to read.
Yeah.
You're not like in Kenya rescuing people out of the ditches, but maybe you are. How have you come into this organization called Reading Pals Chico that focuses on literacy? And give us the thumbnail of what Reading Pals Chico does.
Yeah. So Reading Pals essentially came out of my return home, which I was not expecting to do, and navigating or asking the questions like how, and my own internal questions like, how do we prevent people from ending up in trafficking, incarcerated, homeless, drug abuse, situations? Like, what's the beginning? And how do we, and it all just continued, all the research I did, all the time I spent, everything came back to like early childhood education and or opportunity. And so when we started, there was a gentleman that I've known forever. And when I was home visiting, he just asked if I could meet him for coffee, and kind of came in, and I thought, he just probably wanted some advice about what charity to give to. That's kind of what people would ask. Like, I want to help trafficked victims. Who can I give to, And
yeah.
But his conversation was so different. He's like, I really want to do something in Chico that's very transformative, and I want to engage citizens in issues that are happening in our community, and I want you to run it. I have some funds. And again, I wasn't planning to stay in Chico. I was literally home visiting. And so I was like, thanks, but no thanks. I'm leaving. I'm going to grad school. I need some more education before I make a difference in the world. And my very new boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband of 15 years, was like, you realize he's offering to pay you to do what? Remember that thought you had about going back to your hometown neighborhood again? And I'm like, okay, are we really doing this? And so I said, let's try it. And we essentially went on a listening tour of our community, like what were the real needs and what are the issues facing. We knew there was homelessness. We knew there was, drug abuse. We knew that there was business owners that were having a hard time employing people who knew how to write and read, and everything kind of came back to this piece. And my own personal, research was just about how prolific sex trafficking was becoming in the United States. And it's predominantly kids that dropped out of school and or had been in foster care and timed out. And so with that, we talked to the district, and they're like, man, it would be really helpful if kids could read at grade level. 60% of the kids in Chico at the time were not reading at grade level.
Wow.
That's on par with nationwide statistics, but it's shocking when people know that. And illiteracy is a massive epidemic that we're facing because it is like so directly tied to incarceration rates. Again, all these societal ills that I've mentioned several times, but truly like the very foundation of it, the prevention, is if we spent 1 hour a week just reading with a kid and actually getting them to change their mindsets. They've already internalized that they're bad readers and they're bad students, and they internalize that so young. And so our whole goal is pairing them with a volunteer who's going to be like, hey, this is how I learn. We're going to do this together. I'm on your team. We're going to figure this out. And what we found is it completely transforms the student experience, their mindset about it themselves. And then we see that transformation impact the rest of their career as a student. And we have stories now of students who graduated and are now teachers that started in Reading Pals 14 years ago with hopelessness.
Amazing.
And it transformed their own stories.
It seems like community-driven volunteerism is a core driver or engine of your program, right? You're
Yeah.
not just hiring staff and making
No.
sure you've got the right tutors, well-trained. I have to assume that that's intentional. It's how you scale. It's how you deliver value beyond just the recipient of the tutoring. We often talk in our work at Historic around the two audiences, mission with, mission for.
Right.
Mission for those receiving the services, mission with those receiving something in partnership. How talk about that priority of community, of volunteerism, and the amount of energy and effort it takes to cultivate and raise them up.
That's exactly, I mean, we essentially are doing both. And community is there's not enough money in the world to pay for every student to have a one-on-one professional tutor. Like there just isn't, it's not feasible. And so what we have done is created a system for 400 community or 300 volunteers come in every week for at least 1 hour a week. And they work with 400 students here in our community that are struggling in reading. We do all of our sessions on school sites, most during school hours, some a little bit after school. And our volunteers just read. And they're from all different backgrounds, mostly non-educators. And we created a super simple system, super simple. I'm not an educator. I didn't know what the education needs was. I didn't know how to do it. And what we found was it doesn't matter. If you're just a positive adult who can come in and sit next to a kid and offer support, there's a huge impact. Like 86% of our kids quadruple their literacy learning rate, and every month they're enrolled in our program. And that's because they have a positive adult. It doesn't, and again, it is all community volunteers. That's the reason we built it. It's the way we built it. And again, we also wanted, like, our volunteers get a lot out of this too. If they were sitting here with me, they'd tell you that they started for the kids, but they continue for themselves, truly, because they love it so much. And they personally feel a lot of meaning and like sense of belonging in our community through this.
Well, it's interesting because Chico isn't the biggest place on earth, right? It's got a lot of people, but it's not huge. And yet you said you've got 300?
Yeah, 300 volunteers and 400 kids.
Okay, so that's a pretty significant ratio in terms of percentage of a city,
Yeah.
the community involved. What does it look like to maintain, sustain, keep them engaged, make a value prop to them as much as to the recipients of the tutoring?
Volunteering isn't free. People are like, oh, my time's free, but it does take a significant lift to actually do all the scheduling. And our whole goal in developing this program, we developed it in conjunction with the district. We didn't want to add to their burden. And quite frankly, when I was first trying to get this started, the principals are like, thanks, but no thanks. Like, we've had so many volunteers that have come in and they have great intentions, but they create a lot more work for our staff. They're not sustainable. And I'm like, I'm here and I'm going to do this. And I knocked on doors until we had some partners. And now the most resistant principal to having me on campus is now one of our largest advocates. He just retired from admin for the district. And he will tell like anybody who asks, like, this is the partnership you want, because it's been incredible for the school district to have all these community volunteers from all walks of life, doctors, lawyers, CPAs, helicopter pilots, flight attendants that all give 1 hour a week and they come in, and it just like totally transforms the campus as well, because kids haven't had that experience necessarily with seeing, professional adults in this capacity. And it's really transformative for students too, because our volunteers come in and they just know the kid is Johnny. They don't know that Johnny's in the principal's office every day for 10 hours, like they don't know the kids as their labels that they wind up getting at school. They just find out.
They're not given a dossier on the kid.
Yes, exactly. So they just come in and it's really cool. And that's one of the principal's feedback for us is like, I'm the one who knows what kids are in my office all the time, but our volunteers don't know that. And they just come in and treat these kids like the individual they are. And that's a really special thing too for kids, because so much of, what we become is a self-fulfilling prophecy if we've believed the negative things. So that's a beautiful part about having these community members come in, but it takes a significant lift of staff. Like really a full-time staff person to every 50 volunteers is the ratio for volunteer retention and recruitment pieces. Because we're navigating 800 sessions a week because our kids come twice a week for 30 minutes. And so it is a lot of, people have vacations and they're sick, and we're trying to fill in every session and make sure that it's all taken care of. We're on all 12 campuses in Chico. And so it is like I have myself and then I have, 6 other part-time staff that help do the juggle and navigate all this so that kids are getting sessions every day.
So it seems like you've been very intentional about minimizing friction and creating a model that meets people where they're at versus asking them for some sort of like 5 hours a week or huge commitment, right? And maybe that seems like that's working. Has that always been the idea? Have you grown into that?
Honestly, the partner, Rory, who I originally started this with, he's a full-time, structural engineer, the principal of a CEO of a structural engineering firm that builds huge buildings all over the world. And he's like, I don't have 10 hours a month and I can't commit to that, but an hour a week, I can invest an hour a week, even with my busy schedule. And so that's always been our goal. So our volunteers come in an hour a week and they work with 2 kids, each for 30 minutes. And they go home and they literally walk in. We have a super simple curriculum. It's meant, like we wrote it for like an 8th grader. We do actually have 8th graders that are some of our reading pals that come in and work with our young ones. And we just tell everyone, like our youngest volunteer is 13, our oldest is 93. And anyone in between, if you can read, you can teach a kid to read. It's kind of our motto. And it's really just about sitting down and getting to know a student individually and just giving them hope. And that really is what the gift of literacy is like. And all those statistics, all the neuroscience shows that the way that kids' brains form, like the way that neural pathways form is within the context of a safe social relationship. And for a lot of the kids that come to Reading Pals, their classroom hasn't felt like a safe place. They've been made fun of by their classmates. They know that they get nervous if they have to read out loud. They haven't had the practice, and then they often become the class clowns or the ones that are screwing around. And so what's so fun is that they come in, they have 30 minutes twice a week talking with an adult one-on-one, and that's transformative. Most students during the day, I think the average talk time with an adult's 20 seconds. And so when they come in twice a week, they've got 30 minutes each day. They have to talk to an adult one-on-one, have full sentences, not using slang, all the things. And it's just transformative for them. And then all of a sudden, they're the ones raising their hands in class and they're helping others. And that just, it just changes your confidence level. So it literally changes the trajectory of their future.
So it seems like what you're doing as a brand, Reading Pals Chico, right? It feels local, boutique. Yeah. It has kind of a Chico proud, which is great because Chico needs some of that. You've been through a lot.
Yeah. We've got Sierra Nevada and Clean Canteen. We've got some big things to our name.
But at the same time, as you were saying earlier, right? Like the National Assessment of Educational Progress said in 2024, 40% of 4th graders or 33% of 8th graders are below basic levels in reading. And like this is not, and it doesn't seem like it's getting better. It seems like the needle is typically cascading downward, dripping downward. What are you a growth and scale person? Like, because this seems like this model and what you're doing should be beyond Chico. Do you have plans, dreams, visions for that? Or do you like this being a Chico thing and then the rest of the world can take care of itself?
Honestly, we created it for our community. We wanted to see, and what's really fascinating is that we're talking about the, national assessments and it's dire. The statistics are dire, but California Chico Unified is the top in the state for the amount of growth that students are making. And everything's, when we started this, 60% of the kids don't read at grade level. Now it's 48%. So there's like significant, which doesn't sound like a lot maybe, but it's significant when you've included, we had the campfire happen here locally that wiped out school for 3 weeks. And so many of our kids experienced secondary trauma to that. Not maybe they didn't actually lose their homes, but they all of a sudden had family members living with them that were unsafe, or they had mom and dad who used to be divorced living back together, or they lost their rentals properties because everything shifted here with rentals when that happened. And so they were couch surfing with their families. There's been so many ripple effects that our students experience. And then you had COVID. And so most districts are negative, like losing numbers, and Chico Unified is not. And when they look apples to apples and compare, and other districts are like, what are you doing? Why are you guys so positive? And the superintendent of Chico Unified was like, Michelle, when we compare, the biggest difference is that we've had 3,600 kids have one-on-one time with a volunteer. And 3,000 of those kids are still at Chico Unified, K through 12. Only a few hundred graduated because we were much smaller in the very beginning when we were trying this out. But it makes an impact. And that's what she's seeing when she's in these meetings with other districts about what's different. Like the biggest thing that stands out is that they've had multiple thousands of kids have one-on-one time with a volunteer. So that's impactful. And we're seeing that now. We just won a statewide award last year from the California School Board Association for that connection that we brought community in to solve an issue, and we're watching it solve. It's not perfect, and there's always going to be challenges. My whole goal was to work myself out of a job, really, truly. And we're like, if we can catch kids up younger and younger, and we're working towards that. So now we've developed a program called Reading Pals Junior, where we're working with first grade and kinder. We're even about to develop those kits for parents to use at 3 and 4 years old. So their kiddos have that foundation that's really like early. We developed a program called Math Pals. So math is now, only 23% of the kids in our community, and that's pretty on par for nationwide, are proficient in math. So the district 2 years ago, they're like, okay, we feel like we've got reading dialed in. Can we transition the model that we've had such a success with Reading Pals and use it for math? And so that's a whole nother challenge, but it's been really fun, and we have developed that. And as far as scaling, Reading Pals is now in 23 different schools. We're in Lake Tahoe. Shasta County just started. We have another county in Northern California that wants to start 8 schools next year. And we just shipped a kit off to Washington, D.C. that's going to be used at the community center, a community youth center. They already have mentors and mentees. They have 150 mentors that work with 150 mentees in Washington, D.C. And those mentees, that connection, they're thoroughly vetted, all these pieces, their space, but they spend 10 hours a month together. And that group is now going to have a requirement that the mentors spend 4 hours doing Reading Pals with their student. So it's not just like the feel-good mentor relationship, but also their academics have a boost. And so we're working with Howard University students as well back there that are going to be doing Reading Pals drop-in sessions for kids that don't have a mentor. So as far as scaling, we are doing that. We've had requests from so many different communities that we're actually developing a resource website now, because really the amount of people we can say yes to just based on my own capacity to do it. And so we feel like the time is now to put infrastructure together where we can help other communities replicate this. So we're doing it. And if people are interested, you can look at our website, readingpalschico.org. We are about to transition that to just Reading Pals because we have so many communities and other places that are starting to license with us. And we recognize that it's not just about Chico anymore. So to your point, this is really easy and it's really affordable for communities to start, whether that's churches or community organizations or schools.
So I'm curious about growth and scale and you as a leader. So I typically find that nonprofit leaders are either wired for scale and want to grow, have that drive. Maybe it's competition or entrepreneurialism, or they're just growth minded. And others are much more like, listen, if I had it my way, I would just stay small and do the work and focus on my territory. Which one are you on that continuum? Do you tip more towards, listen, I'd be satisfied just being Chico, or no, I really am a growth scale person? How do you, because there's huge opportunity. This is clearly working. This would be the kind of thing where it's like, let's take on, on capital and expand.
Let's say both and.
Okay.
I wanted to be present for my kids and raise my own kids. And I got to do that largely. I mean, Reading Pals was really built with a baby on my hip kind of the last 14 years. I guess my oldest is only 11, or almost 11. So 11 years. And that's what I really wanted to do. And then part of it is constantly like, because we do partner with the district, we're like, well, is this still relevant? And they're like, yes. So I would say up until now, I've really wanted to stay local for my own capacity, because I think one of the things that we've noticed the most, and one of the responses that kids have shared the most at the end of the year when we ask them, what do you love about coming to Reading Pals? The answer far and away in the last 4 and 5 years has been they love being with an adult that's not on their phone. They love being with an adult that's not too busy for them. And that, as a mom, was like a real dagger to the heart and just a huge point of awareness for me. 4 kids trying to do it all, running this. It was like I needed to be present with my kids. And so wasn't ready for any sort of like large growth. And then there's just been this really interesting this last year. All these pieces have come together. There's a lot of momentum. We have a lot of the data. Now we have a lot of requests from other areas. And I think people are hungry for this model because nothing else is working, really. Like even what you referenced, the national assessment, yada, yada, that even with all the funding that went to literacy after COVID, the needle has gone down. I mean, it's not, what we're trying is not working. And so this answer of having community in, and then on top of that, the Attorney General published a big report a few months ago, and it basically said that like loneliness is the most dangerous, whatever you call it, health issue
Risk
of our time. Right now. And that like, that's what they're seeing for so many seniors is just like not having a place to connect and have meaning. And that's the other side of the spectrum, right? Like we're recreating the village. And that's what I loved about living in other countries is like, they still live intergenerationally. It's like why they don't have dementia in a lot of other countries, like because people are still relevant in their old age. And so that's what Reading Pals has been really, is this almost like bringing the village back together, and has this really kind of beautiful gift for both people, and like when I lived in Africa, people were like, oh, wow, like so amazing. And my response was always like, I needed Africa more than Africa needed me. Like what I got there enriched my life so much more than anything I gave there. And the same would be said of Thailand or any other place that I lived. But I think as maybe white middle class, especially evangelical, being raised, it's like you go and give what you have. Like it's such a gift, but I got the gift when I was in those other places. And I feel like that's what our volunteers wind up coming away with too, is the gift that they get from working with their students. So that said, I think I'm transitioning from wanting to stay local to recognizing that what we have is so replicable, it's so scalable, and it's so affordable. And our goal is never to make a ton of money on this. It's literally to like offer it to communities to see transformation.
Well, let's talk about your funding model because, clearly you have this volunteer infrastructure, and yet the infrastructure needs support, and support costs money.
Yeah.
What is your funding model? To what extent do you receive government funds versus private donation versus corporate models, partnerships? How does it work?
We have a kind of a unique situation in that we've partnered with the schools, and I just have been in the nonprofit sector and watched so much waste, honestly. And I think there's so many creative ways of thinking about things. So my entire budget is $165,000 for running Reading Pals. So for the bang for the buck, it's an incredible return on investment. And that's really where I sit. Like I want to see good return on investment. And I think this is like one of the best that any of our donors have really, truly. So we don't receive any government grants other than obviously, we do partner with the schools, and the schools pay for they give us our space free of charge. We don't see any of the money they spend, but they do pay for credentialed teachers part-time to be our site coordinators to oversee the sessions. And that's for the protection of the volunteers and the students. And then they also cover the cost of vetting for our volunteers. We crunched numbers with them, and it just made sense for them to buy a live scan machine and do all the vetting. For our volunteers, our local hospital helps pitch in and do the TB tests if skin tests are necessary for our volunteers. So it's really this beautiful tapestry, like interwoven of like different community that we've just pulled together. One of my full-time employees is paid for through the university with a grant with the AmeriCorps seniors. So we have several senior citizens that are volunteers that qualify based on income to get a stipend for every hour that they volunteer with us too. So it's this really, again, mutually beneficial. So most of our funding is private donors. We have site sponsors. So we have local businesses that sponsor a site. It's $5,000 to sponsor a site for the year. And that pays for a part-time volunteer coordinator. We have used the same curriculum for 13 years. Like it's not like we're purchasing new stuff every year. We wanted to be really good stewards of everything that's been given to us. We have some local foundations that pitch in. And then largely we have a lot of student sponsors. So a lot of donors that just say, hey, I'm going to take responsibility for a kid and it's $408 for the year. And so I think we have about 250 student sponsors. We've got 8 site sponsors, and we've got a few like local grants and organizations that help fund our portion of it.
So it seems like it's a very distributed, decentralized, low overhead
Very
model.
much.
And yet in scale and growth, is your model to reproduce this low overhead, organic, scalable model that's in a decentralized kind of way, or to increase overhead for the purpose of ensuring control or training or scale, right? Like, how do you see the funding changing in light of your vision or capacity for growth?
Such a good question. And honestly, we're figuring out those answers at the moment. So currently, the way we've done it and structured things is like a license agreement with partner organizations, whether that's a foundation or a school district or a county office or one specific school. Or we have like, community organizations. So like this group in Washington, D.C. is a kind of like a Boys and Girls Club style youth organization that has a space, and they have, all these things. They already have their insurance. They have their volunteer coordinators, that sort of thing. So in that regard, we plan to keep the licensing agreement, like our overhead, pretty low. We will need to hire just to help navigate the ability to scale and just respond, I guess, to the response. So that it's in the process right now. And then determining what this looks like going forward. Like, do we wind up doing chapters or things like that? That's to come. But I think like we want to stay true to the model that we've created here, where it really is very low overhead. It's partnership with the schools and or library or community organization. It's something that is implementable by groups that are already doing it. I don't think there needs to be reinventing the wheel or like an establishment of a huge organization to spend a lot of money in other areas. I don't see us needing to have buildings in other spaces or other cities. It literally is a kit that fits in a FedEx box that I ship out for $30, and and then the curriculum shows up at their door with the books, and I have a little video for how to put it together, and all in, like between the licensing fee that we do charge and the curriculum piece, it winds up being between $3,500 and $5,500 essentially for a community or a school or a church or an organization to start this. So, and then really the only ongoing cost is we do have like an annual renewal fee to license with us, which is between $500 and $1,500, depending on how many sites there are. And then really the volunteer coordinator, like this doesn't work without someone to coordinate the volunteers. And so as much as I say that, sometimes people don't believe me and they try it without, and then they realize that doesn't work because volunteer isn't free. I will just say, sounds like a great idea, but it isn't. And that's one of the things I think that keeps our volunteers coming back. We have a very high retention rate. Many of our volunteers have been with us for 10, 12 years. And we do trainings, like on Tuesday, we're doing a training, I think I told you, at Brian's church. And so we give support and equip our volunteers so they feel really empowered to continue making progress with their students. And that's, I think, part of why people they feel supported. Like they're not just put in and said, good luck. Like we try to connect.
So you're in this season of, you've got something working, you've got a model, you see the potential for scale and growth, the funding model. And it also sounds like in light of the current administration, you're not experiencing friction like so many others are, where funding is being restricted or all of their DEI-B initiatives are having to be rethought and relabeled and renamed. And sounds like you're operating almost in a way that's effectively below the radar of the broader government.
Thank God,
which is
truly.
right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm curious about your role. So you're is it president, executive director, CEO, or whatever?
Yeah, CEO or executive director, depends on what you're looking at, what literature.
So as CEO, executive director, president, supreme ruler, whatever the title is, where does your time go? Do you wish you could just be tutoring kids, or do you like the leadership, fundraising, scale stuff?
Where does my time go? It depends on the day. Currently, my right hand who runs the program here in Chico is on maternity leave. So that's really fun right now. Because then my time's like really actually back on sites. I try to be on sites as much as possible during the week. All of our sessions run during the afternoon. So usually mornings are my admin time. Recently, a lot of my time's been going to support sites who just have started, that have licensed with us and that have started. And I love the connection and inspiration. One of the pain points of growing is I don't know every kid in the program anymore, and I don't know every volunteer in the program anymore, which I did in the beginning, and so that's always like a little sad when I get to go to the end of the year party and I'm like, they don't know me and I don't know them, but it's also the benefit. I have an incredible team. So I have 6 folks who go out and they are present on those campuses. They do know those kids' names. They do know those volunteers. And that's the beauty of this. And part of, I think, the challenge as a leader, right? And like growing is I'm constantly getting stretched in what and how to support my team to go be effective. And I'm really lucky to have incredible people where I feel like they're really great extensions. I know that the volunteers were cared for by them. I know that they know their names. I know that the kids feel that connection to them. And I float around to as many campuses as I can to continue that connection. Like I said, several of our volunteers have been with us for 12 and 13 and 14 years. They know my kids. They know my son had open heart surgery a year and a half ago. And the volunteers they surrounded us in a way that I could never have ever never asked for, but they were like, your family matters. And they were so supportive of our family through a really hard time. And in that way, they have become more than just volunteers or, numbers on pages. They're really like people who care.
I want to explore that theme a little bit. You're a nonprofit leader that's making a difference. You've got something that's working. You want to scale. You're not you have enough drive. It sounds like that scale and growth and success is definitely something that you can see and want to pursue. At the same time, you've got a really intentional commitment to home and to your family and to your kids. And I want to explore that. Is that hard to maintain? Is it a constant tension? Is it easy for you? Do things like kids needing open heart surgery frustrate you because it takes you away from the job? Or is it easy for you to flip back into mom mode?
Honestly, there's a huge part of me that would love to just get to be mom and only focus on that. I think as my kids are getting older, I'm recognizing it's getting harder to do that because their needs are shifting. And so I first and foremost, my family comes first. My board knows that. Everybody who is around me knows that. I put pedal to the metal Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday, I get to go to baby ballet, mommy and me ballet class in the morning. And then I work again in the afternoon. I spend a lot of evenings like on the computer after the kids are in bed. But I'm mom first, and my kids all know that. And, I skip work when I get to go drive for a field trip. I drive for every field trip I can. Like, I think being present for our own kids, I guess one of my situations, I got to watch some folks who were incredibly impactful in the world, but their own kids suffered. And their own kids didn't feel like they knew their own parents because they were out busy saving the world. And I didn't want that to be me. I didn't want that to be my kid's story. And I wasn't sure I could do both. And so I wasn't sure I would have kids, actually. And then when we did, and now 4, I knew that like I'm going to be present for my own kids before I show up for any other kid, because otherwise someone else is going to be showing up for my kid because I'm not there. And while we do have an incredible village that surrounds us, like my husband quit his full-time job when Reading Pals started taking off, and so we both work part-time, and we both are with our kids part-time. And that's just what has worked for our family because we wanted to be with our own kids first. It's so short, so fleeting.
Yeah.
And in that, it's easy for me to turn off. The other piece of that is I know it can be frustrating for other people because I'm not moving as fast as they'd like me to, but I don't care at some level. And so as far as the scaling goes, just knowing that I'm where I'm supposed to be with my family.
Yeah. It takes some of that. I give myself permission not to care about every single thing I could care about at all times. I mean, you have to be able to turn it off.
And that's, the part, like, It's I don't know if you've heard the juggling of the balls, you know? There's the glass balls that are really important, you don't drop and let break, and then there's the other balls. And so I'm very mindful that I don't want to drop the most important ones, and the most important ones are my kids, my husband, my family. And then
I love that
if I drop a plastic ball that's like I didn't get the newsletter out in time, or
it'll bounce.
Yeah, it'll bounce.
You've made a lot of good decisions. There's a lot of great things working in your favor. You seem to have very good work-life boundaries and understanding, which in the nonprofit space is hard because it's so missional and we care and bleed. What's one of the worst leadership decisions you've made in the last 2 years that you wish you could undo?
I think for me, it was not handing over more earlier to my team, who are super capable, and navigating like who to bring on to take on what. I think sometimes takes more energy than I had at the time, really. But like I was out for 4 months and my son had open heart surgery and everything went great. And it was so good for me to like realize, and I think that was one of the things I learned in college. I just took a nonprofit class and they're like, no one's irreplaceable. Like, don't ever think you're not replaceable. And so for me, not handing things over early enough. And honestly, now that we're scaling, I'm trying to refigure out, what do I hand over? How do I hand it over? Who do we bring on? And that's, I guess, the other piece is maybe not, I'm always concerned about payroll, right? So maybe not bringing on someone early enough, I think, is the other thing. Like, because I was worried about the funding. So
that's really good.
It's a tension.
Last question is, you're walking into that big room we talked about earlier, with that music playing in the background, and there's a room full of nonprofit leaders that are senior leaders of nonprofits that are much larger than yours. What's the one piece of wisdom or the one conviction or the thing that is most important for you to give to them? The thing that you feel like you actually have to offer them that despite the size disparity or national reach or whatever of of you versus them?
My contribution is, are we taking care of the most important things first? And, like saving the world, like you said, it's just so many things are constantly asking for our time and everything feels urgent in this culture. And I guess for me, a huge lesson I learned in being in other cultures is, are we taking care of the most important things first? And that should be being present with the people who we love most. And I take a month off every year. I go travel, take my family, go on sabbatical. So I would say presence. Are we present first and like not wasting the time that we have? And actually, are we going to, get to the end and regret that we got everything checked off our to-do list, but we missed the memory of the beach with our kids or yada, yada.